Broadcasting live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How we doing, Rolly?
I'm great. How about yourself, man?
I'm doing great, man. Hey, the reaction to the pod has been pretty good. I've seen some of the comments and whatnot that people have been leaving for us. And one of the things that I did want to say right at the top was, if you want to join in on the discussion, please like, share, and subscribe this. That's the best way to do it. And to look for us on all our social media locations. I know for sure we're at radiolothal.com. We also have a YouTube channel and an Instagram, and that one is at Radio Lothal. And what else do we got, Rolly?
That's all we got for now. I'm working on the rest, try to get us out there, but
we have a Facebook.
Relatively new territory for me.
We have a Facebook.
Yes, we have a Facebook page.
We do have a Facebook
You can
page.
look for us at Good Morning Lothal there, the same as YouTube.
Okay. And before we get to today's episode, I also wanted to hit on something really, really cool. At least I think it's really cool because I'm a traditional podcast fan. You can find us on all the major podcast apps right now. So right now, if you search on the Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio podcast app, Overcast, and Podbean, that's where you can find our show in all those locations, which is, I think it's kind of cool. I mean, granted, we've had a YouTube show since day one, a video version of the podcast, but like for any old school traditional podcast, I know a friend of ours named Louis is one of the ones that has asked for it. And you said a couple of your friends were asking about it right after episode 1.
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely. Yes.
Okay, so we went right to work on that for you guys. I think it's pretty cool. It filled me with pride to be able to search Good Morning Lothal on the Apple Podcast app, and there we are. We pop up, and it's like, I think we're legit, really. I mean, I could be wrong.
Feel the same way, man. When you told me it was there, I looked it up and I was like, okay, this is awesome. I just want to be like, for this, I just always wanted to participate with the Star Wars community, the people that are putting out content. And yeah, it's cool. And it's great that we're on YouTube, right? It's cool to see that. But even I kind of got like a similar reaction, dude. You put it on podcasts, and I don't know if it makes you feel more professional because it's old school.
Definitely.
But yeah, it's definitely like a different feeling when you listen to it on there as opposed to watching it. But, you know, nonetheless, I don't want to discourage people from watching the videos. Pete does a great job of editing and, you know, putting a lot more into this. So by all means, still follow us on YouTube as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 4 of Star Wars Rebels. It's called Fight or Flight. But before we get into that, Rolly, what's happening around the galaxy?
Let's see what's happening this week in Star Wars.
So this week in Star Wars, we have some really awesome news. The big news that, you know, hit my feed is that there was an interview done with Hayden Christensen with Entertainment Weekly, who we all know is the original actor for Anakin Skywalker. Well, Hayden Christensen is also set to appear in the Kenobi series, which is coming out May 27th. And obviously this implies multiple things. He's actually donning the suit to play Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. But, you know, as Clone Wars and Rebels fans, you know, prequel fans are really hoping for is that we get Anakin flashbacks.
Yes.
And he actually gave an awesome quote that I wanted to read to everybody. And he came out and said, with regard to his studying of Clone Wars and Rebels, which he was using to prepare the role, he said, it's interesting. He said, they did a lot with these characters in these two shows, and they did further explore the relationship. There was interesting stuff there to learn about. It was great fun getting to go back and reimmerse yourself in this world that just continues to grow and become more and more vast.
Right.
So from this, I guess we're basically being told that Hayden Christensen, you know, I don't know if he was necessarily aware of Clone Wars and Rebels, or maybe he was and he just hadn't seen it.
Right. That's probably what it was.
Yeah, probably. But if you need further confirmation from anybody else besides us, but the man himself who plays Anakin and Vader telling you the importance of the animated series, right, and how much character development is going on in these shows, then I don't know what more to tell you than that. what he came out and said this week. So please, again, don't make me twist your arms like I'm twisting my friends, but watch these shows if you're a fan, because they're just so great and they add so much to the pre-existing movies and such.
Right. Now, just touching on Kenobi that's coming out here on Disney Plus soon. You mentioned flashback scenes to Anakin. So do you think that there will be how much screen time is he going to have as the burnt visage of Anakin in the Vader outfit versus him as, regular jumping back into, let's just say Clone Wars scenes that we might have of him and Obi-Wan talking? What would you rather see, I guess is a better way to put it. What are you more intrigued by?
I mean, because I know we haven't talked much about Clone Wars, but we get so much character development for Anakin Skywalker during the period between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith in the 7th season of Clone Wars. I wish that they could flash back and show you, scenes of that version of Anakin. There's a lot of criticism of Hayden Christensen's Anakin's character in the prequel movies. And to be fair, some of it is justified. Right. Whether it's dialogue, whether it's the acting, I don't want to go down that path. Right. But what I think a lot of fans fail to see is, again, those are only 2.5 hour movies. Yeah. And there's such a big gap between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So legitimately in Attack of the Clones, he's a kid. We're talking about Ezra in this show. Anakin's a Padawan. He's very full of himself. Obi-Wan's having to teach him, even though Obi-Wan wasn't intended to be Anakin's master. Right. So there's a lot going on in that relationship there that that causes Anakin to be the way he is. And then you flash forward to Revenge of the Sith, and at that point he's already supposed to be, the strongest Jedi there is, the chosen one, and that's the point when he's going to switch to Vader. And for a lot of fans, you still see him as the cocky, Padawan. Right. There's no development in between. And like I said, we can talk about criticisms of the acting, the dialogue and all that, but ultimately there is missing story there. And it's very hard, in my opinion, to go from one extreme to the other, and going from unexperienced Padawan that's just full of himself to, borderline master Jedi who should be sitting on the council and just turns to the dark side and is just consumed by it all. So, and again, watch Clone Wars. Because that's the version of Anakin that I'm hoping to see. I'm not going to get my hopes up, Pete. I think that we're going to get mostly Vader, Hayden Christensen. But as a fan of these cartoons, I just really hope that they give us at least a splash of throwback Anakin Skywalker. I mean, even more so that the guy went and saw his character in the animated series and admitted, hey, they did so much more with my character. That would be great to see on screen too. Right. And I mean, it's kind of just switching gears real quick to the DC universe. I remember when Dark Knight was announced back in 2004, was it? I don't know. Anyway, not important. Heath Ledger, a traditional, what's the word? Method actor. I don't know how much is Hollywood myth or whatnot, but he apparently went into seclusion into a hotel room and with a stack of Batman, graphic novels, specifically ones that involve the Joker. And he just kind of read up on that character before he fully, dove into it and put his own iconic, spin on it. But in this case, it's similar, but it's different in the sense that there's already a precedent of him playing this character. But then after he was done playing the character, then there was 9 seasons of, was it 9 seasons of 7 seasons of Clone Wars, where it's just jam packed with more character development. So I really appreciated the fact that he dove into that and he used that as a guide to say okay, they're asking me to come back and be this character again. I could just come in and say I'm going to play it the way I want to play it because I've played it because it's me, but he respected the extra literature, so to speak, to pad it and to help shape this character. And I think that is pretty incredible. And one of the things that I did
I was confused about was, in the movies, Vader doesn't ever take off his mask, and when he does, it's because he's in his relaxation chamber or whatever they call it, like where he's can take it off and whatnot. So I don't foresee him being I don't foresee that. Yes, I'm sure we're going to catch a glimpse of him with like the burnt face and the red eyes and whatever, and we'll see that being played by Hayden. But I think there will be plenty of scenes that jump back to where he's in full just Anakin pre-Vader form to help pad the rest of the series. I am very much looking forward to that series.
Definitely.
So let's move on to this week's episode. It's called Fight or Flight. Rolly, hit us with a synopsis.
All right. So this episode focuses heavily on Ezra Bridger and Zeb Orrelios. They are sent on a supply run after constantly arguing with one another aboard the Ghost. During the mission, they steal an Imperial TIE fighter and are ordered by Hera and Kanan to return to the Ghost. Along the way, they discover that a family of farmers, including Bridger's old friend Murad Sumar, have been arrested by the Empire. The two rebels rescue the farmers and fight the Imperials. After hiding the TIE fighter, Ezra and Zeb return to the Ghost, having become better friends for the experience.
So what was your takeaway from this episode? Like, did you enjoy it?
Very enjoyable episode. Definitely our first filler episode. Yeah. But nonetheless, great character development. You saw at the ending of the previous episode that there was going to be some, I guess, conflict resolvement between Ezra and Zeb in the sense that Ezra saves Zeb's life. Right. This episode basically carries that idea over, and that it's an adventure episode for the two of them, and they learn to grow on each other more, and that relationship is developed. And yes.
Right. So the one thing that I took away from it definitely was just kind of planting seeds of the brotherhood between Ezra and Zeb. They do fight like brothers. They're, at one point they're chasing each other around and just kind of like, about to wail on each other, just like a big brother would with a little brother. Yes. So that was kind of cool to see that it was technically, and I'm glad you said it and not me, but it was kind of a filler episode. But at the same time, there was a lot of character development in, like you said, to help push the agenda that these two, they may seem like they hate each other, but deep down inside, they know that they can count on each other for sure. Yeah. And it starts off, the episode starts off with, Ezra still, it's kind of a reminder to the audience that he's still, daily practicing and training as far as his Jedi skills. He's trying to move a bowl and with the Force, using the Force. And there was a really funny scene where he thought that he moved it, but it was actually Chopper that was moving it. So.
That's going to be for anybody that's following the show brand new. The Chopper pranks are definitely going to be almost every single episode occurrence. There's some type of nonsense that this chaotic droid is creating, so it's always something that I look forward to. Even on the rewatches, I'm still laughing at the scenes, and this one was one of them.
Yes, most definitely. So one of the other things that also gets a seed, like not the seed that was planted this episode, because it was since they first met, but Ezra's kind of got the hots for Sabine, if you ask me. Yeah. I mean, he's constantly.
I think it's funny. When I had gotten a buddy of ours to watch this show, I would say about a year ago, he blasted through the Clone Wars, and he was like, "You know what? It's a bit much. I loved it, but let me take a break to recover before I jump into Rebels." And one of the first things he said, I think it was like it had to have been in the first couple episodes. He said something to the extent of, Sabine's like that badass girl in high school who you were too intimidated to talk to, but you found hot because of that reason.
Yes, most definitely.
So when I see Ezra, I think this is his second attempt to make small talk with Sabine. That's how I picture, ever since my friend told me that comment, that's how I picture, that's probably what Ezra's thinking. Like, okay, yeah, she's younger. She's clearly older than Ezra, right? But he was like, that's the girl. Here's my chance. I'm going to go for it.
Right.
So I'm going to take my shot every single time I can get it.
She's the senior with the dyed hair that like is just like this really hot, like kind of a badass chick, just like you said. I thought that was really funny. And of course, that's going to continue on as the series goes. One question I had for you is, I mean, other than the obvious, because they're the Empire and they're like, you know, the dicks of the whole series, what is the appeal, or what is the end game for muscling farmers out of their land?
I mean, I believe ultimately it's just intimidation tactics to make sure that there is no rebellion that develops. Okay. You know, I think they said it in the sequel trilogy when we're talking about, oh man, I wish I remember the exact quote. We probably need to touch on it in the future. I think in The Last Jedi, they talked about it just takes a spark to ignite a rebellion. Something like that. Yes. I wish I knew it for, that quote exactly, because that is one of my favorite films, despite all the criticism that it gets from a lot of Star Wars fans. It just has so many iconic moments and lines, and that's one of them. And it applies to, you know, what you're asking here. That's the first thing I thought of as soon as you mentioned it, because it's true. It just takes one little uprising, a successful one at that, to get people to join you. And that's ultimately what this show is about. This ghost crew, the Phoenix Squadron, if you will. They're just a small cell of rebels. Yeah, they're not part of the grander rebel alliance at this point. They're just doing this on their own because they know whatever little difference they can make in people's lives against the Empire is for the greater cause. It's for the good of the people. And
it just like instills that same theme of hope running throughout the entire you know, the hope that whatever it is that you're going through right now, that it's not forever. And, you know, there might be an empire that is, you know, got their boot on your neck, but there are people that are fighting for a new hope, I guess, is the...
Yeah. So before we jump ahead, you know, let's rewind a bit. The episode starts off with this chaos that Zeb and Ezra are creating aboard the ship, because Ezra's feuding with Chopper. Chopper tries to zap him. He zaps Zeb, and that part of it is very much comedic. Chopper accidentally zaps Zeb. You know, Ezra's arguing, "Hey man, you know, I just saved your life. Give me a break." Blah blah blah. Because he basically goes after Ezra as the root cause of the problem, as opposed to Chopper. So they start chasing each other throughout the ship. And in the process, Hera and Kanan see them, and Hera just gets basically upset. She's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm tired of this. Let me send them on some mundane task, which ends up being a supply run. And the cool part about it is she specifically tells them, bring back this type of fruit, a specific type of fruit. It's called the Melu Run. And she sends them. She's like, hey, you know what? Get everything on this list, but don't even think about coming back unless you bring back this Melu Run fruit.
Right.
So they leave. Ezra's like, yeah, no big deal. I mean, we can take care of that. It's just fruit, right? So they leave, and Kanan's like, you know that there's no Melu Run on Lothal, right? And she's like, oh, I'm very much aware of that. So her intent, is basically, I don't care about the supplies. These guys just need to go out there and figure out their issues.
Right. They need to stop destroying my ship and just get the hell out there. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So basically they go out and they're looking for the Melu Runs, right? And come to find out, he finds out immediately, hey, you know, they're not on this planet. And that's where he runs into the old Bridger family friend, Sumar. Sumar tells him that. So he tells him, you're going to have to go look for some type of off-world trader that might be here, that might have the fruit. So quickly I think they run into like a Rodian. He's kind of like a Greedo type character from A New Hope. And the guy tells them, well, I had them, but I just sold them to the Empire.
Right.
So in that town, that's where the episode takes off, because Zeb and Ezra are basically going to try to steal a piece of fruit from the Empire. And it's super funny because later in the show, when they're trying to finally resolve this conflict with the Empire, one of the stormtrooper tells them, he's like, really, you did all this for a piece of fruit? So that was a pretty funny part.
Yeah, so basically, yes. And just going back to the title of the episode, it's Fight or Flight. So eventually, you were right. Like last week, I asked you what you thought it was going to be about, and that's exactly what it was. There's a TIE fighter involved. And just a side note, what is your favorite ship in the Star Wars universe?
Oh man, put me on the spot, man.
Yes, I did.
I feel like anything that I say and some fan here, it's not what their favorite ship, I'm just gonna get blasted for it. I personally enjoyed, the X-Wing.
Okay.
That's the ship that I grew up with the original trilogy. That was Luke Skywalker's ship. That's the ship that I remember thinking this has to be the best one when I first saw A New Hope. Because those are the only ships that survive. The Y-wing bombers just get slaughtered. Right. The X-wing has the cool design. It's the ship that ultimately destroys the Death Star. And I think at that point really got driven home. Flash forward to the sequel trilogy, and you see Poe Dameron flying the X-wing, but flying it like nobody you've ever seen in Star Wars. So I think that one will always be my favorite. I hesitate to not say the Millennium Falcon because it's so iconic, but it's got to be the X-Wing. Yeah. What is yours?
That Millennium Falcon. I'd have to go with that. That's the first ship that I ever saw that looks so different because it just looked like a pancake or something, like flying through the. It didn't look like any other ship, and that's the first one that I remember from my childhood, like really, really gravitating towards and like wanting the Micro Machines version of it and whatnot. Like I was begging my parents to get me that one. And just fast forwarding to the what's the first? The Force Awakens. I remember distinctly, and granted it wasn't that long ago because that just came out in theaters 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. I remember being in the theater, and as that scene where they're running away, Rey and Finn are running away, and she says, it's just a hunk of junk, and then they turn and they pan the camera over. Yeah. That's the big reveal. I'm not proud to say it, but I rolled a tear. Like when I saw it, it was like seeing an old friend on the big screen again, and I was like, okay, that for me that solidified the fact that is, to me, the most iconic ship in the Star Wars universe. But
oh yeah, like even in the trailer, I still remember the trailer from The Force Awakens. That was like one of the first things that came out in the teaser trailer, and I specifically remember it because a buddy of ours, we were on a trip somewhere when that trailer dropped, somewhere in San Antonio, and he kept rewatching that part of the trailer over and over and over again, hundreds of times. So finally, like our other buddy just told him, "Can you stop? Like it's enough." So I'll never forget that trailer specifically because of that, that little sequence with the Falcon in it. It was awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah. So speaking of the Falcon, getting back to the show, there's actually a really cool part that's a throwback to the original trilogy and the Falcon, to be specific. Basically, while Ezra and Zeb are creating chaos, trying to get this fruit, they kind of cut back to the Ghost, and they show a throwback scene, and they show Chopper playing what's known as the Jarik. I think casual fan might know that as the chess, the hollow chess game that's played on the Falcon.
The little characters like on a chessboard, like on a round chessboard.
Yeah, he's playing that with Kanan, and just to we talked about parallels last episode, so I really want to make that a talking point rather whenever I see them. And that's when, again, it's a throwback to the scene that everybody remembers from A New Hope where R2 is playing against Chewbacca, the exact same game, except some of the Millennium Falcon. And that's the part where R2 makes a move that I guess he takes one of Chewbacca's pieces, and Chewbacca gets upset, and C-3PO is like, well, what are you complaining about? He made a fair move. And then Han Solo proceeds to tell him, well, Wookiees are known to rip droids' arms out of their sockets or something to that extent. So so C-3PO advises R2. He's like, let the Wookiee win.
Yep, let the Wookiee win. Exactly.
Yeah, so that part was a pretty cool throwback to there. And then I guess they cut back to Ezra and Zeb communicating with Kanan, like, hey, we're on our way back, but we ran into an issue with the Empire, and we actually stole a TIE fighter. And he just like loses it. He's like, what are you doing? Like, we're not trying to bring a spotlight to ourselves, get ourselves caught, and you went and stole an Imperial TIE fighter.
Right. And he's like, I at the very least, I hope that you disengage the tracking device on it.
Yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, we took care of that, as they're like doing it then and there.
Right. That is pretty funny.
Yeah, so Kanan asked them to take the TIE fighter to a rendezvous point so they can figure out how to get rid of it, hide it, whatever. And also rendezvous so they can get the heck out of there. However, when they're on their way, Ezra sees like some smoke in the distance. And we had just seen right before that the Empire had actually revisited Sumar. We saw them in an earlier scene where they were threatening him, asking him, hey, can you sell it to us, but basically twisting his arm, sell it to us. Sell us your farm property. And he said no. So this next scene, it basically shows the Empire going out to his farm and threatening him that, hey, we're not asking you anymore, we're telling you. So they blast his farmstead, and they actually take him and his farm workers / family into hostage. So
right.
Ezra senses this, he sees it with smoke, and they end up tracking down the Imperial convoy, and there's a rescue attempt that happens, and him and Zeb basically have to work together to rescue Sumar and his family. Okay, so during the sequence, it's really cool because we get another scene of Ezra using the Force. And earlier in this episode, he failed spectacularly when Chopper assisted him in lifting the bowl.
Right.
But in this episode, we see the emotion being harnessed into control when he has to use the Force. He can't reach the lock that is holding Sumar to unlock them from the convoy, so he has to reach out and use the Force to unlock it. And I don't remember, I think the Force music hits again. The Force,
yes, there was.
It usually iconically does, but it was really cool.
Very subtle in the background. I like the way that they incorporate that.
Yeah, it was really awesome because to go back to the last episode when Ezra saved Zeb, he used the Force, but he used it out of pure emotion. It was totally uncontrollable. And in this one, mind you, Ezra hasn't really been trained on screen so far by Kanan. So a lot of it, this is self-learning. Well, this move that he uses is from emotion because this is to save his friend's life.
Right. But
he actually harnesses and focuses, concentrates to unlock it. So this is very much Ezra, excelling in his training.
Right. Learning to harness it and control it. And
yes.
And more of not an emotional outburst. It's more of just like, okay, I'm using my emotion to help shape and direct it to do exactly what it is I want to do. And in this case, it was to unlock the prisoner locks. So,
they end up rescuing Sumar and the farm workers and family. They take off back to meet up with Kanan and the rest of the Ghost crew. One thing that's really cool that happens here, it's not a major plot point or anything, but it's something that I want to talk about. So Ezra and Zeb rescue Sumar, and then we transition to a scene where it shows Kanan waiting by the Ghost to meet up with them. During that transition, there was something really cool that stood out that I really wanted to discuss on today's episode. And there was a piece of music that was played that is actually a throwback to The Phantom Menace. The piece is entitled Watto's Deal and Kids at Play, if anybody's looking to look up the soundtrack for episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And Star Wars fans might instantly recognize that it's from there. They just might not remember, hey, where's that music from? And that's exactly what happened to me when I was rewatching this. I was like, I know that piece, it's iconic. Mm-hmm. And mind you, it's a 5-second little riff from the full song. But instantly, as I paused the episode and I was like, I got to find out where that's from. And I knew the scene. And it's where Qui-Gon is talking to Anakin's mother, Shmi. And he's asking her questions about Anakin's background, like who is the father, I need to know more about him because he's so strong in the Force. And Shmi basically tells him there's no father. He does everything out of the good of his heart. He doesn't know any evil. So she asks him, can you help him? And he confesses to her, I don't know, because I didn't come here to free slaves, but I know that this kid was put in my path for a reason. And then it transitions to this piece that I'm talking about in this episode as well, where it shows the kids come out to support Anakin as they're working on his pod racer. And every time I hear that little riff, because I've heard it splashed in video games here and there, and then here again I'm hearing it in Rebels. It kind of gives me like a sense of hope. And I think that's the idea of Star Wars music, in that it's supposed to convey emotion and make scenes memorable.
Right.
I wanted to touch on that because, John Williams, who a lot of people may know is famously the composer for all Star Wars music. Well, he's not actually the composer for the animated series. The animated series is Kevin Kiner, but Kevin Kiner specifically uses excerpts from John Williams' original Star Wars pieces,
right,
to make the fans know that this is connected. In the same way we talked about poetry in the last episode, it's seen in the music as well. And the Star Wars music, for me, it always paints such a vivid picture of what's happening in the movie. I feel like I can put on a soundtrack and listen to it through, and it's the equivalent of me having seen the movie, because I can see all the scenes happening
right
as the music's being played,
as any good score would do. I mean, it's to invoke a feeling, and it's to create like a connective tissue between the music and the visual. So much so that if you listen to just the music alone, it'll instantly take you back to that same visual. But go on. Yeah.
And it's funny too, because I actually had a friend recently. It was not a Star Wars related conversation. I think I was telling her how I was listening to such and such soundtrack at work, and she made a comment like, "Oh man, I don't know how you could do that. Like, I have to have lyrics to my music. They just add so much more." And I didn't argue back, because I do agree. Lyrics they're a huge part of music. But when we're talking about music that is specifically, or instrumental music that's specifically made to, convey emotions and paint pictures in your mind, to me, that is lyrics. It's a different form.
Right.
And so again, Star Wars, it's the music in it, just to touch on it one last time, it's iconic, and it's iconic for a reason.
No doubt. So bring us back into the episode once Zeb and Ezra return back to the ghost ship.
Yeah, so they get back to the ship, and I think right away Hera's like, "Did you bring me what I asked for?" Even though she doesn't really care.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, here we go. Melee run wasn't a problem at all." And then Kanan, who's more worried about the bigger picture, goes, "And what'd you do with the TIE fighter?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, we crashed it. It's gone. Don't worry about it." But when they say it, they make this like face, like they're clearly lying.
Right. That they had like a little side eye towards each other. Like, okay. Yeah. And I don't remember, like, that's part of the beauty of the rewatch is I know I watched this once before, but I don't remember like what ends up happening with the TIE fighter. And I'm sure we're going to get into that later, but what would be their reason, would you say, for lying about it or keeping it a secret?
I think ultimately it goes back to what you said about older brother, younger brother. On the Ghost, the parents of the ship are Hera and Kanan.
Right.
The kids are Sabine, Zeb, Ezra, and Chopper. So the kid, it's like in families, kids are always going to keep secrets between themselves and not tell the parents. And in this case, to me, it's kind of like, oh, this is a huge deal. We're not going to get rid of a TIE fighter. Are you kidding me? Like, well, I found this. This is mine.
Right.
So I think that was their intent. I don't necessarily think they're intending to use it later, but they're like, no, we worked hard for this. This is rightfully ours now, even though we stole it.
Right.
We're going to keep it, and we're not going to tell anybody.
Yeah. No, that's true. Okay. So as we wrap up this episode it's called, again, Fight or Flight. The next episode that we're about to look at next week is called Rise of the Old Masters. So just, again, we're going to play that game again. Based on the title alone, what do you think is going to happen?
I think we're definitely going to get some type of revisit from an old Jedi Master. This is post Order 66. So now that we have Kanan, we hope that there is more people or more Jedi rather, that survived. So I think that's what the episode is going to be about.
I think you're absolutely right. Hey, I'm not going to doubt you anymore. Like, you were right about the last one. So, okay. So that brings us to the end of this week's episode. It was called Fight or Flight. And before I let you go, I would be remiss if I don't ask once again that if you want to join us on the greater social media discussion, please follow us on all our social media apps. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're quickly moving into other, I think we're setting up a Twitter coming up soon. We're definitely on YouTube. And also, most importantly, at least to me, we are on all podcast apps, wherever you find your podcasts. I'm talking Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeart Radio Podcasts, Podbean, Overcast, everywhere. We're working on Spotify. We're almost there. So just bear with us on that one. But yes, please, once again, would you please like, rate, and subscribe to us on any platform that you choose to get your podcast at? It would greatly help us, bump us up, and help your boys out here. Anything else you want to say, Rolly, before we let them go?
No, I think you touched on everything. Maybe just if anybody has suggestions of what they want to hear on the show,
yes,
please give us your feedback, and we'd be more than happy to try to include that.
Right. We're still in our building phase. So any information, any comments, any concerns, any type of feedback is very much welcome. So as of now, this brings us to the end of this episode. I'm Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora,
saying thank you for joining us once again at Good Morning Lothal. Visit us at radiolothal.com. And for now, may the Force be with you always. Goodbye from Lothal.